Hey YouTube, I think it might be fun to do a quick video on how to go through and clean up and recap a 150 watt power supply from an arcade machine. These were common in games in the 90s, like a lot of the Konami beat 'em ups. Ninja Turtles did not have this style, they had the 15 amp small style, but Simpsons and X-Men and like Sunset Riders, things like that. These also came factory in the Neo Geo cabs and some of the Big Blues. This one's actually out of a Capcom Big Blue. And then other Dynamo cabs as well. They do still make 150 watt power supplies, where this is our model number USP11. The 150 means 150 watt. But the new ones are about 3/4 of the size, and they don't mount up the same on these cabinets. So you can kind of see the dirt ring from that kind of teardrop shape that is the opening in the back of the cabinet, because this mounts through the back wall. But the newer one, the new 150 watt power supplies that are smaller, don't fit in that same pattern, so you have to figure out a unique way to mount them. So I think a lot of people will probably want to start rebuilding the big 150 watt power supplies because you can't find them new anymore. So some exterior differences on these, because there are some slight variations. Some of the older styles just have a twist-in fuse holder here, and then there's a smaller fuse in there, not the 1.25" long one, but like the 20mm long style. And this is where your AC comes in. And then there's also different configurations here. This would be for a cabinet that uses this as the power switch for the entire cabinet. So there's a cutout in the side of the cabinet that you can stick your finger in and turn it on and off. The other style will have 4 wires coming out and then a plug, and that would go to a remote power switch somewhere else in the cab. And on those ones there should be a little sticker down here saying that pins 1 and 3 go together, and then pins 2 and 4 go together. Because if you're going to try and test it on the bench, you're going to have to make a little jumper harness so that your AC coming out gets returned right away, because you won't have a switch to plug into on the bench like you would in the cabinet. Now there is a 12-volt fan up here as well, so make sure that's working before you decide to open this up, because if not, you definitely want to replace that. And there is a fan here, but the opening on the back is just a vent. And it might seem counterintuitive, but this is the exterior of the cabinet, and the air does not go in here and go out the top. The fan pushes it down and kicks it out of the cabinet. So if you do install a new fan, make sure that your flow direction is down into the power supply, and you can actually feel wind coming out of here to cool the power supply down. Configurations for the output that you might see different. Pretty much all of them have a 3-plug AC connector. So AC comes in and then just goes straight through to this, but it's through the switch. And then this is what you use to power your isolation transformer for your monitor or your marquee lights or any other AC stuff in your cab. And then the basic style here just puts out 5 volts, 12 volts, and then -5. So the +5 are the red 3 on the edge on the rigid side of the connection. And then the ground is going right down the middle. All 3 are black. And then the white wire is -5 volts, and then the yellow wire is +12. On the newer 150 watt power supplies, this spot that's empty on the newer ones is actually a blue wire for -12. So the newer, same wattage but smaller size, also does -12. Which most cabs, if you plug that into, won't have a wire coming off the other side, so there's no harm in plugging that in. You might see some power supplies like this that have maybe twice or double these hanging out if your cab needed them, or maybe there's a hard drive connector too. I don't know what this is. I don't know what was going on in this big blue cabinet, but I'm going to guess that was added at some point, so I might just completely remove that. Your voltage adjust is here. This is a pot potentiometer that you can turn, and then counterclockwise is higher voltage, counterclockwise is lower voltage. This sets the 5 volts only. That's the fixed voltage in this power supply. All the others, like the +12 and the -5, are derived off of that. So you want to set your 5 volts to about 5.1, but really no higher, and that means that your 12 volts doesn't always come up to be exactly 12. It might be close to 11, and your -5 might not be exactly on, but you want your 5 to be on. The other ones are much more tolerant on the game when it's running, but you want your 5 volts to be exactly on. Now for this power supply, to get it open, I've already taken the screws out. They're just quarter head, or you can even use a Phillips There are a total of 3 on the top. Then there are 2 more on the side. There's nothing on the back. And then there's 2 down there, and then there's 1 more by the power switch. You do not want to take the screws out of the fan because these are mounted to the top, and if you take the fan loose, it will fall down and you will not be able to screw this back in unless you open up the power supply. So leave the fan in place. I'll spin this around so it looks like it normally would when we're taking it out of a game. And also keep in mind that there's wires to this fan, so the top is going to be somewhat tethered until you can get in and open it up. This is a little tricky with one hand. Well, then here's what the inside looks like, and this one is filthy. So definitely get some compressed air in there and clean it out. This was perfectly working. I imagine this was the original one that came in that big blue cab from probably the early 90s. But I'm going to go through and get it cleaned up. I got a cap kit for it. Peter at arcadepartsandrepair.com sells a nice cap kit for this. The filter caps, the big ones, they're in the back here. The 2 filter caps do not come in the kit, so you have to purchase those separately. For this size of power supply, it's I can get them on camera, the 330 microfarad at 200 volts. And those are actually the 2 big caps right here. And then there are, I didn't count them, probably a dozen kind of spread out in there. Now to get this out of the case, I'll probably do this in a couple videos. The output wires are just in this grommet. They come up, and then they're free. You can take this potentiometer bracket. That was our our 5-volt adjust. That comes out just with these 2 screws, and then the pot and the bracket can just kind of flop around while you're flipping this upside down to solder your new caps in. I'm also going to put some cleaner on that pot and turn it back and forth a few times to make sure it's clean. I'm going to replace the fan. It was still working, but I'm just going to put a new one in anyway. It looks like someone did at some point. So those I'm actually just going to clip and then fix them later. But remember that this fan needs to blow down. I'm going to see if there's specs on there. I think the last one that I took out was, I just rebuilt one of these right now and it's testing. But this is one out of the other one. So it's a 12-volt fan, and then it consumes about 0.14 amps of power. So you probably don't want to get, and I believe this was the stock fan in that other supply that I did. You don't want to grab a fan that's too much higher of a consumption voltage, because it might do stuff. If it's on the 12-volt line, it might make your sound do weird things. So try and get it as low amperage a fan that you can. And again, it needs to blow into the power supply. And then to get the other stuff, this whole side bracket, and this is tough to do with one hand, this whole side bracket just slides up. There's kind of a hook-in gauge here, and then there's a couple, I'd call it 3 fingers on the bottom that sit on that ledge, so then when you take this off, that can ride along with the PCB. The PCB just has 4 screws on the corners to take out, and that'll lift right out. The only thing that you have to absolutely unhook are the blue and the red wires off of the AC in. So those need to come out. You also have to take off the nut for the ground wire here. You can leave the one that goes to the power plug, but you have to take this first one. And then you can also take these 2 screws out for this fuse panel, or if it was the breaker panel, and then that can just come with. So this will ride along. Take these screws out, that'll ride along. You'll leave this with the green wire attached, but pull the blue and the red. And then that pot bracket will come off with those, and then you can get this out upside down and start working on it.